Hey Andy, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Rohan?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm a huge fan. You're one of the best follows on Instagram just because of everything you post is just like ridiculously cool. So it's really cool to meet you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And so I just wanted to start off with like I know you're Korean American, and I wanted to what did it kind of just mean to you like being you've been working for Marvel Studios for as long as I can remember, and now you get to finally design a legit Asian American superhero and then also kind of create the visual look of this entire sort of world. So how did that mean to you when you were initially offered the project?
Oh man. Yeah. As you mentioned, I've been here for a long time. It's been 11 and a half years ever since the first Captain America. So yeah, to be able to work and lead the Viz Dev team, the first, you know, Asian superhero, at least there were other ones like Wong and stuff like that, but the first title,
Yeah.
film, it meant a lot to me, and it continues to mean a lot to me because I grew up. I was born in the U.S. My parents immigrated from Korea in the '70s, and then I grew up in California.
Yeah.
So yeah, not being able to see, there. I grew up in a world, and I grew up reading comic books, as a teenager and everything like that. So, and then I was, an artist, always drawing, but I rarely ever drew like Asians or
Yeah.
anyone that looks like me, because it was just normal that everyone wasn't. So and then I didn't see much on TV, movies, or even cartoons. When you did, it kind of stuck out. I'm like, oh wow, look, there's that quick kick from GI Joe,
Yeah.
or in a movie from like Indiana Jones, like Short Round, things like that. And then eventually through the years you saw more and more. And then of course the MCU being pop culture is very front and center for the past decade. So and I do Comic Cons, I meet so many people that love these films and these characters, and I see how much it means to them. So to be able, and then I was so proud that I got to lead the team on like Captain Marvel, the very first solo female title character, as well as Ant-Man and the Wasp, who shared the first female sharing the title with Ant-Man. And then to be able to work on, I didn't lead, but work on Black Panther. And then now with Shang-Chi, and I see what it means to people as well as myself. So it means a lot. It means a lot. And I'm very, very proud of what we've done. It was a very challenging film. Every time we do these firsts, they're always very challenging because there's so much pressure, and you want to get it right. But Marvel Studios has always been a leader in the industry. So it's of course starting with Kevin Feige. But not to say we're not nervous, because everyone has good intentions, but you don't always get everything right.
Yeah.
But Marvel Studios has had a pretty good record on getting it right for the most part. So very proud of the film, very proud of being able to lead the team on this film. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. No, it's a great film. They did such a great job. And then everything you do, Shang-Chi's costume is very, I mean, I know it draws inspiration from his comics look, but this, like the movie reinvents his origins. Like you were
Mhm.
able to reinvent his sort of look. I guess it draws more from the recent comics. So what can you tell me about your sort of approach to, when you started putting sort of pen to paper?
Yeah, like because we're an in-house team of artists that are full-time at Marvel Studios, we work on it. We even started doing some preliminary work even before there was Destin or Simu Liu cast or hired. So back then we didn't really know what the story was. So the story evolves even as we go into pre-production. So the first thing we always do is dive into the comics, trying to extrapolate stuff that we can from there.
Mhm.
Shang-Chi is a little bit more challenging, with the origins and everything. But as the story started getting developed, I started honing in on what Destin and also of course the leadership and Jonathan Schwartz and Kevin Feige wanted. But I did the full exploration from like very traditional ancient Chinese like costumes to eventually seeing that the story is he's going to be spending time a lot in the West. So doing very westernized, more urban, modernized clothing that even you and I can wear. And then as the story got more and more solidified, that's when the ideas of like, oh, okay, there's going to be a dragon in this film. Like,
Yeah.
awesome. Great. So that's when I started having the idea of like, oh, well, if this is something that's given to him from his mom, and there's a dragon there as the great protector, then he can have some kind of dragon skin or dragon scales on his suit that acts as an armor, even though but we didn't want to put him in like armor, right?
Hmm.
But because it has kind of a magical, otherworldly properties, that's where I started coming up with those ideas. And then, of course, taking the motif, that upside down black triangle motif on the chest area from the comics, and then coming with the idea of the symbol, the eternal knot.
Hmm.
I came up with that idea in my research, and I thought that would be perfect because it's a symbol that's used in many cultures, but definitely used in Chinese culture throughout the hundreds of years in art and architecture and fashion, and has a lot of symbolic meanings from like for everything from birth to death to rebirth, the never-ending cycle of life. And then the other added thing that it means is like when it's given as a gift, there's a connection between the giver and the receiver. So I thought that would be perfect with the story of the mother essentially giving this suit of armor, or this kind of this jacket, this whole outfit to her son, Shang-Chi, as a warrior as well as to protect him. So yeah, it was a full exploration of like, what is this thing?
Awesome. And so like I saw like when you started because the MC used to be a little more, I guess, grounded in, relatively speaking, but now it's like full blown mystical, multiversal. It's just going all over the place, exploding. And so it's like, and I know you worked on God of War. I'm still working my way through the last God of War. But
Oh yeah.
so like is it like when you're getting to design stuff like the Great Protector and like the Dweller in the Darkness, it's like, is it more in line with like your natural tendencies, or is it like, because you get to design dragons, so like how just cool is that, or like what's your sort of approach to these characters that you get to like just make up sort of?
Yeah, I mean, as artists, like, I think we love to be pushed, right? And for me, I've always enjoyed, the more pushed it is, the more fun it is. So I've worked there for over a decade, and I've worked on projects where it's very grounded, right? Obviously with the first Captain America, and then working on Ant-Man. I mean, there's crazy things about those movies as well, but it's in a real world, more based on science, right? MCU science.
Yeah.
But then there's movies like Guardians of the Galaxy that I've worked on, and Thor. And even though I enjoy the grounded characters, in all honesty, I do enjoy the more pushed, like fantastical.
Mm.
Just as a artist, as a designer, it's more fun to be kind of like push and not be bound to so many rules, right?
Yeah.
So it's more open-ended. So Shang-Chi definitely went into that area. And after this many movies, like almost 30 movies in, like it's almost like, where do you go? Like how can you keep this fresh? And then as they were telling me what Shang-Chi is, I was like, okay, they keep on doing it. They keep on creating like more and more places for us to go that's like fresh, in a whole other corner of the MCU, which keeps the whole MCU fresh, just idea wise, and as well as just like all these characters. So it keeps it exciting, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
being able to design dragons and just the power sets, like all that stuff is just,
Yeah.
that's where the fun is as an artist.
Very cool. And so like I've also been kind of curious because you're working with Kevin fairly early on, you and Ryan too, who did what if recently, and so like what's that sort of process like? Like how early does Kevin approach you guys before a sort of project comes together, and how early do you like, how do you guys split up the work, or what's that whole sort of process? I'm guessing not many people are aware of.
Yeah. Ryan, he's the head of visual development, right? And
Mm.
he was the one that initially hired me, along with a guy named Charlie Wen, who's no longer with us, who was the co-head at that time. But then for the for the past like 6 years, like it was me and Ryan as the two leaders. So we'll split, like, okay, he works on this movie, and then while he was working on Black Panther, I was working on like Captain Marvel, Ant-Man, that kind of thing. So we'll kind of just kind of figure out who works on what. And as you mentioned, he did What If, a lot of the animated stuff, animation stuff. I'm working on Shang-Chi, and then Thor: Love and Thunder, that kind of thing. So yeah, Kevin and the producers, just in for Shang-Chi, is Jonathan Schwartz. That he came up to me pretty early on, like even before they started pre-production on the film. So that's kind of normal. They'll come to us, and that's the benefit of our department, because normally for any studio out there, they don't have like in-house artists. It's just they only hire the artists once pre-production starts, and they have their the heads of each department, and they start actually doing the work with the director. But at Marvel Studios, we exist, so we can start doing work early on. So yeah, there was no script yet, so we're just doing like high level, like concept keyframe or design keyframe illustrations of Shang-Chi in certain scenarios, knowing that that the main antagonist is going to be his dad in some form. There might be a dragon, things like that were like thrown to us, and we're like, oh, cool, there's gonna be a dragon in this film. And
Yeah.
So yeah, we started doing some preliminary ideation just to get people excited, because they're like, once it's one thing to have it written down or verbally said, but once you have a painting, people see it, and everyone gets on the same page, and people can start. It helps to spur conversations and ideas.
Yeah, awesome. And so like I'm kind of curious, like, because oftentimes like the Marvel characters are not just like in the comics they wear like the same costume, but you're switching costumes throughout the movie. And then Wenwu, who's awesome, Tony Leung does such a great job. And so like and you already worked on sort of the Mandarin, like the Mandarin in 2000 in the Iron Man 3, and then this time you get to really show who the Mandarin is, and you get to get it as dark as possible. And I remember I think on Civil War you had so many different Scarlet Witch designs, which are each one like it's cooler and cooler and cooler. And then so like how many variations do you typically go for like a certain character and before they make it to screen?
Yeah, that's the bulk of our job, right? We're trying to come up with their costume look, the heroes. So for me, I was working on Shang-Chi, and it took several months. So I'm working every single day. So I did probably, I don't know, definitely over 100 like different versions. Just some of them are more extreme than others. But again, I did the whole exploration of more like ancient Chinese looks. I did some like the comic where he's shirtless, some that had, he has some kind of tattoos, some mystical elements. And then as we started honing down, with the Tao Lo and the whole dragon, the great protector, that's when ideas started getting more and more solidified. But I go through the whole gamut. And then, we have meetings every week or every other week in a big room with, the director and all the heads of all the other departments, the leadership of Marvel. And they can, we start showing those pieces, version after version, and it spurs on conversation. They can say whatever they want, what they like, what they don't like. Like, let's explore this idea. And it helps as well, because they're writing it at the same time. They're coming up with these ideas, as we're also illustrating, right? And coming up doing design. So the whole idea is for the rings, that's from Destin saying like, maybe we could have them like the Hungar rings, the training martial art rings, those are real things, rather than the finger rings, right? Because it's too similar to Thanos. So it's all part of the collaborative process of ideation. We're doing ideation through our designs and artwork, and discussions are continuing that way until we hone in on that final look that makes sense for the story.
Awesome. And yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. But yeah, I was lucky enough to already get to see your work on Hawkeye. I saw the first 2 episodes, but so I wanted to kind of ask about, so you get to design Kate Bishop, who's I think people are really gonna like her. This will come out after the show comes out, but can you talk about sort of, because she draws inspiration obviously from Clint's different costumes throughout the year, adds a little more of the comic flair. So what was your sort of approach to redesigning Clint and Kate for this show based on just what we've seen in the trailers?
Actually, like I only did like very initial, like, we talked about the early process before there's a story or director or that kind of thing. So I was
Mhm.
doing very early high level just design work on, yeah, Kate Bishop.
Mhm.
But Rodney Fontevella, he's a super the first thing that he supervised, so that he got promoted, so he supervised that film, so, or that show. So I only did that initial, like those probably pieces that you've seen. After that,
Mhm.
I didn't work on it, so I didn't do the final like Kate Bishop costume. That was, I'll leave it to them to say who did it, but yeah. So mine was
No
just
worries.
initial, like early ideas.
No worries. Yeah. So I mean, just last question, I guess. Is there just like a character that you're just like extremely proud of? Like you're sort of like the one you go to. Like, and you did amazing on Shang-Chi, but yeah, just like the character, is that if that one's it, or if there's just a character you're like, I nailed that one, or that's the one I see the hot toy and it's just like that's my work right there.
That question I get a lot, and it's always hard to just say one. So I have to cheat and say like a couple, because I really love each one for different reasons,
Mhm.
and then I can go on for an hour to specify, but I can't, we don't have time for that. But
Yeah.
Ant-Man, Ant-Man definitely, designed all the Ant-Mans through the years, so that one's really really special to me. um um Captain Marvel, Hella, Shang-Chi now. So I mean, those are just a few. I can go on and on with other characters, but I think those are very special for different reasons,
Mhm.
for each character, because each of them were so challenging, in different ways, and that's why I always say Ant-Man, because that one, you know, the ones that we take from the early, that were created in the 60s early on, the more goofy the comic origins are, those are
Yeah.
more fun, but they're more challenging because you have more leeway, but you also have to try to be, you still want to be like respectful to the origins. So Ant-Man was a big like transition, trying to get that original Jack Kirby look, how to get
Yeah.
that to look cool for the MCU but still look retro. But yeah, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your time. This has just been so
Hey,
cool talking to you.
yeah, nice to meet you, Rohan.
Nice to meet you.